She did not wake up that morning thinking about the voicemail, but some mornings arrive already heavy, carrying a quiet weight that settles into the chest before the eyes even open, and that morning felt exactly like one of those. The house was still dim when she opened her eyes, the light outside pale and uncertain, as if the day itself was hesitating, unsure whether it should stay gently or slip away without being noticed. She lay still for a long moment, listening to the familiar sounds around her, the faint hum of the refrigerator, and the slow ticking of the clock blending into a rhythm she had lived with for years. The house creaked softly as it settled, a sound that felt almost alive, steady, and patient. Never asking the questions she had spent a lifetime learning how to avoid, when she finally reached for the edge of the bed and sat up. She did so carefully, her joints reminding her of time passing in ways mirrors never could and photographs never warned her about. She slipped into her slippers, pulled her robe closer around her shoulders, and walked toward the kitchen along a path she knew so well she could have followed it in the dark. She filled the kettle and stood by the window while it heated, watching the quiet street below where cars were parked in places that once felt unfamiliar and had slowly become permanent. The neighborhood had changed little by little over the years, not enough to shock her, but just enough that she sometimes felt like a visitor walking through her own memories. She poured her tea and sat at the small table, wrapping both hands around the warm cup as if warmth itself were something she needed to hold on to. The chair across from her remained empty as it always did, and although she noticed it every morning, she never allowed her eyes to linger there for very long. After breakfast, she began tidying the house, not because it was messy, but because movement gave shape to the hours and kept the silence from pressing in too closely. She folded blankets that did not need folding and wiped counters that were already clean, letting her hands stay busy while her thoughts wandered quietly on their own. Without planning to, her steps eventually carried her back into the bedroom, a room that always felt slightly heavier than the rest of the house, as if it remembered things she tried not to. She stopped beside the bedside table and opened the top drawer, finding old papers, faded receipts, and instructions for things she no longer owned or even remembered buying. She closed it and opened the second drawer more slowly, her fingers resting on the wood for a moment, as if they already knew what waited inside. There lay a faded handkerchief, neatly folded, something she had not used in years but had never thrown away because some things felt wrong to discard. She lifted it carefully and felt the familiar shape beneath the fabric. Firm and rectangular, unmistakable even before she allowed herself to look. The phone rested in her palm, heavier than she remembered. Or perhaps her hands were simply weaker now after all this time. She sat on the edge of the bed holding it, the room around her unchanged, yet suddenly distant, as if time itself had quietly stepped back to watch. She remembered placing the phone there all those years ago, telling herself it was only temporary, telling herself she would decide what to do with it later when things felt easier. Later had stretched into years, and years had quietly turned into decades without ever asking for her permission. She turned the phone over in her hands and remembered how ordinary it once was, how it used to sit on the kitchen counter, charging overnight while the house slept. She remembered how it would buzz while she cooked, and how she always knew who it was before she even looked at the screen. He never called for dramatic reasons, only for small ones, to say he was running late, or stopping somewhere, or simply because he wanted to hear her voice. A faint smile touched her lips as she remembered how those calls used to annoy her just a little, back when she believed there would always be another one. She reached into the drawer and pulled out the charger she had never thrown away, because throwing it away had always felt like admitting something she was not ready to face. Plugging the phone in felt like waking something fragile from a long and careful sleep she had been guarding for years. The screen flickered and then glowed softly, the icons simple and old-fashioned, untouched by the speed and noise of the world outside her home. She watched the battery slowly fill, waiting very still, afraid that sudden movement might disturb the moment or change her mind. When the phone fully powered on, the screen looked almost empty, except for one small notification waiting patiently exactly where it had always been. One missed voicemail waited there, unchanged and untouched, carrying the same quiet weight it had carried for 20 years. Her finger hovered above the screen as her chest tightened in a way she knew too well, a feeling she had spent years learning how to avoid. She told herself she could still put it back, wrap it again, and close the drawer, pretending nothing had changed, just as she always had. But something inside her was tired of silence, tired of carrying a sound she refused to hear. She pressed play. At first there was only static, and then his voice filled the room, calm and gentle and slightly tired, exactly as it had sounded the last time she heard it. "Hey, it is me," he said, and the words settled into the air as if they had never left, as if time itself had been waiting. She closed her eyes, not from fear, but to listen fully, to let the sound reach the places she had kept locked for years. "I just wanted to tell you I will be a bit late tonight. Nothing to worry about," he said in the same easy tone he always used. She could picture him clearly, standing where he always stood when he called, his shoulders slightly forward, already thinking about coming home. "I stopped by the hardware store and ran into Bill. You remember Bill," he added, and a quiet breath of laughter escaped her before she could stop it. Anyway, do not wait up for me. I will warm up my own dinner, he said, with the ordinary care of someone who believed tomorrow was guaranteed. I love you. The message ended, and the room returned to a silence that felt different now, softer and less frightening than before. She did not cry right away, and she did not move, choosing instead to sit there and breathe while the sound of his voice settled gently inside her. For the first time in 20 years, she understood that the voicemail had never been a goodbye, only a small and ordinary moment preserved exactly as it was. She pressed play again, and then again, each time feeling the pain soften slightly, warming instead of cutting as it once had. Memories returned quietly, the laundry hanging outside that Tuesday afternoon, the warmth of the sun on her arms, the blinking light on the phone. She remembered the knock that came later that night, the men in dark jackets, and the way time seemed to break apart after that. She had spent years believing this sound would undo her, but instead it held her in a way she had never expected. That night she placed the phone on the nightstand instead of hiding it away, and although sleep came slowly, she did not feel completely alone. In the days that followed, she played the message while making tea, while sitting by the window, and sometimes while speaking softly back into the quiet. She told him about the neighbors who had moved away, the tree in the yard that had grown crooked, and the strength she had found without meaning to. When her granddaughter visited and asked about the old phone, she smiled and called it an old memory. Pressing play one more time. He sounds kind, the girl said, and the woman nodded, because that was who he was. The voicemail did not bring him back or erase the years, but it gave her permission to remember without fear and to miss without breaking. When she finally placed the phone away again, she set it in a small box on the shelf beside photographs and old letters, beside the quiet proof of a life shared. Some voices are not meant to disappear, they wait patiently until we are ready to listen again. And sometimes all it takes is pressing play.